Hi there. Welcome to the Bowery Boys. This is Greg Young.
And this is Tom Myers. And Greg, this summer has already been so thrilling in New York City.
Yeah.
That's one word for it. With major anniversaries that are just kind of taking place all over the city, taking over the city.
Really?
But we have one more anniversary to add to that list.
Tiny one, but important.
Because 10 years ago, I can't believe that, it was in 2016, we released the Bowery Boys book called Adventures in Old New York. It's a big, fat, beautiful book filled with hundreds of little stories taken from Manhattan's history.
Flash forward to now, and our publisher, Ulysses Press, has just issued a 10th anniversary edition with a new cover and also a new subtitle for the modern era: Historic Streets, Hidden Spots, and Iconic Neighborhoods in Manhattan. And of course, there are tons of new entries in this as well.
Absolutely. And it is available at a bookstore near you.
Yes.
And because, of course, New York is constantly changing, even the history books need updating. And, there's some really notable places in New York City that didn't even exist or hadn't been completed 10 years ago when we wrote the book. Places like Little Island or, unbelievably, Hudson Yards.
I know.
Can you believe that wasn't even in the book?
I think it was like nearing opening, but we didn't put it in there because we didn't know what it was going to look like. And regrettably, a lot of things have also disappeared. In fact, just in the Lower East Side chapter alone, we had to replace 4 entries because they'd been demolished. It's just a reminder here that the Lower East Side is not, and perhaps will never be, a landmarked protected historic district.
So we hope that our book, Adventures in Old New York, is a way to celebrate all aspects of Manhattan's history, right? Whether it's landmarked or not. So today on the show, we're going to take you on our own little adventure in Old New York.
Yes. We're going to dive into the book headlong and highlight 3 of our favorite historic spots from the book. Just some that we have personal affection for.
We're not going to be reading them from the book.
No. These subjects have popped up in other shows in little bits and pieces, but they've never gotten a full treatment.
Until today.
No.
And each of them is important to the city's history in their own way. And all of these spots are from the 19th and early 20th century.
Yes. Weirdly, none of them exist. Well, 2 of them don't exist. 2 of them have been completely demolished. A third one, it's a huge part of a very fashionable neighborhood today, the building, although the thing that was inside of it, which we'll talk about, is no longer there.
And it's not Hudson Yards.
No, it's not Hudson Yards, but it's not too far away.
It's Hudson adjacent.
Yes, actually.
Oh, the intrigue. So why don't you start us off here? Where are we beginning this adventure in Old New York?
Well, for our first destination, I thought I would take us to the area of New York City Hall. All right?
Okay.
And specifically to the corner of Broadway and Vesey Street. And to an industry that has really supported the growth of the city that I feel we take for granted sometimes. And that is the hospitality industry, or namely the hotel.
Today, in New York and around the world, you can just book one of these hotel rooms and stay with, amenities and clean sheets near the place that you are hoping to visit.
Right. I mean, especially in New York with hundreds of hotels, right?
Thousands.
Thousands. In the colonial period, travel was not very common, especially overland. Thus, there would be no need for an industry that only provided transient housing. What you did have, however, going back to the early days even of Dutch New Amsterdam, were taverns or inns that were known as public houses, which did not exactly focus on quality, right? It wasn't quality rooms or food. There wasn't, they weren't guides for the best public houses in the city, right?
Or you were a captain or something, you probably slept on your ship.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, I mean, a public house is where you stayed, as the name implies. It was for the public.
Right. To quote from Olivia Gershon from an article on JSTOR Daily, quote, These inns and taverns were frequently dirty, flea-infested, and known for poor food and service. They were often just repurposed private homes or shops, typically with 6 or 10 rooms. Travelers often shared rooms and even beds with strangers, unquote.
But the very first landmark, our first destination on this adventure in Old New York, is a place that would change all of that.
Right. This place, which opened in 1834, was known as the Astor House.
Now, I know that people might be getting a little tired, possibly, of hearing the name Astor. I'm not.
Well, there's going to be a lot of Astor in this show. We're giving them that as a trigger warning.
Okay. But we're not talking about Caroline, etc. We're not talking about the 1870s and 80s Astors. We're going all the way back to the OG Astor himself, a man who actually accumulated all of the wealth and the power that would then be spent and exploited by generations to come. And his name was John Jacob Astor.
I find it pretty remarkable, actually, that he, of all historic figures, went on to create one of America's first luxury hotels, because at first, he did not seem to be a man who emanated proper style and class. But he did end up becoming one of the most influential men in the nation. So, Johann Jacob Astor was born on July 17th, 1763, in the town of Waldorf in today's Germany.
Oh, yeah. And the name of Astor's hometown, Waldorf, then became intertwined with the Astor lineage due to his great-grandson being named William Waldorf Astor, who, interestingly enough, opened up his own hotel, the Waldorf Hotel, in 1893, which later became the Hotel Waldorf Astoria, but that's much, much later.
But in other words, and it's really surprising, like looking at him as an individual, kind of rough, rugged man, that the Astor name and that the Astor family would eventually be known for these grand, luxurious hotels.
Well, and side note, Waldorf would also be known for a grand salad. With
True.
lots of mayo. Don't try to hold the mayo on that. Keep going.
But first, rolling back, John Jacob Astor, that's the anglicized version of his name, he would be better known for beaver furs. So he migrates to the United States in 1783 and quickly became involved in this lucrative international fur trading industry.
Yeah, there was still this incredible appetite in Europe, this incredible need for beaver skin, right? They were wearing it in their coats and hats and other accessories. And this brand new country, the United States, still had just a plentitude of beavers available to them in this vast, unexplored North American territory, which meant not only hunting and skinning beavers, but also trading with the region's indigenous tribes who actually captured them.
Right, and then taking those after trading and then sending them off to London or other places through his warehouse, actually, in Montreal. You could compare his rise, I think, to that of a tech billionaire today.
Really?
Because it happened suddenly. He got very, very rich at a very young age, very, very quickly. It was just like that. By 1793, just one decade after he arrived in the United States, he had become North America's most important fur merchant, and by 1808, as legend has it, he officially became America's first millionaire. So the richest man in America.
America's first Elon Muskrat.
Are those like beavers, right? Muskrats, they're the same, aren't they?
I mean, it's the best I could dig up at this particular moment. Needs a little workshop. But needless to say, he was the richest man in America by the time he was 45.
But that was just the start. He also got into this very lucrative trade with China, including opium, FYI. That's an interesting chapter in his life. However, I would say his most savvy investments would be in real estate. which is something he began acquiring and getting into in the year 1789. Now, the biographer Alexander Emmerich suggests this might have become a fascination because his father, back in Waldorf, was not allowed to buy property, in a more feudal area.
And he also arrived here kind of at the right time in the story, right? I mean, it's the years right after the revolution, right? People were flooding into the city, and there were just all of these opportunities for development. You said 1789.
Yes.
And that is when New York, for a very brief time, became the nation's capital. So it really seemed like he arrived here as the city was on the rise.
And so Astor would actually own a lot of lots eventually, becoming not just rich, but quite connected and influential, as you could imagine, having all this property. And so by 1804, he and his family moved into a spacious, lavish townhouse at 233 Broadway at Vesey Street. On the other side of the street from old St. Paul's Chapel. So can you kind of picture that corner, right? So this was, of course, where George Washington first worshipped as president of the United States here at St. Paul's. But even Astor's old home had this federal connection, for it had been owned by Rufus King, a signer of the U.S. Constitution, and eventually he was also a U.S. Senator to Congress. So he moved, so this is how prominent he was, that he moved into the house of a signer of the Constitution.
Which was located at Broadway in Vesey.
Yes.
So how did it go then from being his house into being a hotel?
Right. So I set this up earlier. This particular corner, let's in fact look at the year 1804. New Yorkers, especially wealthy ones, did not have city houses much more north than the common grounds, which was this triangle of property that was just north of his house, which housed the city's almshouse and even the prison. And back in the Revolutionary days, it was like a common grounds where people met and protested and brought their pigs and sheep.
That's behind today's City Hall.
Right. Well, that is really the whole area.
The whole area.
Yeah, the whole area of City Hall Park today, right?
So the city stops there.
But 1804, prior to that, in 1803, the city had already laid a cornerstone in the common grounds for a brand new city hall, which eventually opened many years later in 1812. Okay, so because of that, the prison was swept away. The almshouse actually became a facility which housed several different institutions. It's a serious upgrade because who moved in but the New York Historical Society, the New York Society Library, and many of these types of institutions. So by 1825, with the opening of the Erie Canal, the area around this newly named City Hall Park was quite thriving as a commercial district, but not necessarily as a residential district.
And it would remain really busy and very commercial even to this day.
To this day, 200 years later, yeah.
It's not necessarily a place where you'd want to live, though.
And indeed, by the 1830s, Astor, still living down here, of course, really owned so much land in New York City by this time that he was dabbling in all sorts of affairs, all sorts of things because, of course, he owned property. And so by proxy, he kind of was operating them as well as the landlord. So things like, for instance, theaters and pleasure gardens, actually.
And of course, there's today's Astor Place, where he rather ambitiously also developed some high-end residential. So he knew already that the wealthier classes were moving uptown.
I mean, he even facilitated it. I mean, he assisted in them moving uptown and also assisted in his old neighborhood downtown being more oriented towards business. Now, by the year 1828, John Jacob Astor had even bought a pre-existing hotel. Like he bought one that was already in operation at auction called the City Hotel at 123 Broadway. And it was here, just interacting with this, being the landlord, is where he kind of learned the ropes of the hotel business, got to see it firsthand. Also, on top of it, being so influential and rich and trading with people across the ocean, he was quite the traveler by this time and was familiar with the far more luxurious hotels in other European cities. And so in the year 1834, he tore down his old house, then bought several more plots around it, and then planned for a sumptuous new accommodation that initially would be called the Park Hotel, because it was near City Hall Park, and its cornerstone was laid on July 4th, 1834.
But of course, it wouldn't be called the Park Hotel, right? Because the name Astor already had a bit of cachet. And by the way, it turns out the people who own hotels tend to like to put their names on the side of them in big, bold letters. Astor, I guess, would join them at some point. The Astor family liked to do that as well. Now, it was very nearly completed in December of 1835 when the New York Daily Advertiser declared, quote, "For size and solidity, no building in the United States will compare to it." Great. So that's how huge and massive and monumental even this construction site was. Wow, incredible. So it was finally ready for business here in 1835?
Almost. I think you know what's coming ahead. December 1835.
Oh, right.
For just a couple weeks later, after those words were written, a massive fire broke out in Lower Manhattan on the evening of December 16th, 1835, incinerating hundreds of buildings over 17 blocks, sweeping away colonial architecture, offices, and warehouses, all of it below Wall Street. The fire, fortunately, did not reach the Astor House or the City Hall Park area, but it did transform all of Lower Manhattan, and it expedited that transition into a basic commercial business district.
A district, I guess, that would also need its own hotel, right?
If you think about it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even a luxurious hotel.
Right.
So when was it finally completed and opened?
Well, its big, beautiful doors opened on June 1st, 1836. 309 rooms, over 5 stories, with an entire 6th floor that was just for servants. In a Greek Revival style designed by Isaiah Rogers, who worked on a similar luxury accommodation up in Boston called the Tremont House.
Wow, famous. So he was going for the best architect as well.
The best for the best in New York, right? And among its chief technological luxuries were gas lighting, 1830s here. That's crazy. With its own gas manufacturing plant on site.
Sounds dangerous.
I know. Well, yes. It also had 17 indoor bathrooms and 2 showers with hot and cold running water on each floor.
Wait, how many rooms?
Over 300 rooms.
How many bathrooms?
Well, 17.
Well, okay.
Let's focus on the positive. There were indoor bathrooms in the 1830s.
That's true. I won't focus on the lines of people waiting to get into those bathrooms.
I don't know how they sorted the bathrooms out, if they waited in line or only the most luxurious rooms had the bathrooms.
The point is it had indoor plumbing.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean,
yes, in the 1830s.
But think of it just logically. You couldn't have a luxury hotel with outhouses, could you? I mean, think of the concept, right?
Well, I think they called them chamber pots, but they didn't literally have outhouses in,
Well, this was one of the luxuries. This is one of the luxuries.
Okay.
There was actually the steam engine in the basement that helped keep the water flowing. It initially had 2 dining rooms, one for men and one for women with male companions. Women could not actually dine alone at the Astor House unless accompanied by a man, some say in fear of prostitution, which certainly was a presence in the neighborhood. That's true.
Surely.
It also had a lavish courtyard and a fountain which was covered in a cast iron and glass rotunda by the 1850s. And it was here that perhaps one of New York's most famous bars ever was installed underneath that rotunda, where men drank and made deals until all hours.
At the Astor House.
Yes.
So it sounds like this was a huge hit. It was immediately popular. not just as a hotel, but here, as you say, men are making deals here. So this is also, it's a destination.
Yeah, like a tourist attraction. New Yorkers weren't even used to the concept of luxury and exclusivity in the way that, we know it today, or that a place might even be built above their social class. According to the Long Island Star, on June 2nd, 1836, the Astor House is now opened and daily thronged by the curious under the impression that it is open for inspection, unquote.
Or maybe they just wanted to use one of those bathrooms.
Well, I mean, that would be...
It's so hard to get a bathroom. To find a bathroom.
But I mean, I would want to use the bathroom. That would be such a novelty, right? Of course, the price would have kept people out as well. Rooms...
how much was it?
Well, initially, they were $2 a night.
$2 a night. I mean, that doesn't really seem that expensive at all. I mean, if we do a sort of hot and dirty currency conversion here, inflation adjustment, I think that is just around $75 in 2026.
It's hard to compare. I mean, luxury was so much less luxurious back then, I guess you could say. The prices, the value of a room, obviously skyrocketed far beyond the typical economic metrics we might consider.
And, of course, inflation adjustments and conversions are famously inaccurate and tricky. So, so it was expensive.
It was not every New Yorker had $2 in their pocket to spend the night at the Astor House. Let me just say that was a lot of money. And it also, having that money, being able to stay there, it certainly was prestigious enough for James Gordon Bennett to begin running lists of hotel guests in his newspaper for the New York Herald.
Oh.
And he famously said, quote, "Anyone who can pay $2 a day for a room must be important." Quote.
Those were the days when they published people coming off ships and checking into the Astor House.
It seems intrusive to us now, perhaps, but I mean, now you just do a selfie in front of your hotel and tell the world that you're there, I guess.
But it underscores the fact that the Astor House from the beginning was sort of for the rich and famous, right, of the day, which is an interesting idea in the 1830s when, New York's high society, so most of them were not even living down around here, that many had already started moving up Fifth Avenue, lower Fifth.
Right. I mean, it did attract some social climbers. Of course, it was it was a well-known place. But keep in mind, down here, at this time, this was the business district. So the people who stayed here were national figures, politicians, writers, people such as Charles Dickens, Washington Irving, a slew of presidents and senators.
A who's who.
And then what's interesting, when it opened, it stood across from Scudder's American Museum, which was then purchased in 1841 by P.T. Barnum and then became Barnum's American Museum, which then became the city's biggest tourist attraction for over 2 decades. So, I mean, they're basically more or less facing each other.
Right. So this is a hot area in town. I mean, there's a lot happening here. We talked about also the area in previous shows, like the show on Jenny Lind, the songstress who came over and performed down at Castle Garden or Castle Clinton or Castle whatever it was at that time. But before she embarked on her tour of the United States, she stayed at the Astor House.
Yeah, and in fact, her fans... They knew she was there. I'm sure it was published in the papers. Were so frenzied at her presence that when she boarded her carriage at the Astor House to go down to Castle Gardens to perform, they wanted to be close to her with such passion that they untied her horses. And then they just pulled her down to the venue themselves with their bare hands. They became her horses.
What happened to the horses? They just let them go?
They went to the bar, actually. They're like, get a load of this.
There's a rotunda. There's a bar in the courtyard here. But that frenzy of fans also sounds like something that would happen, not at the Astor House, but much later in the 20th century when the Beatles came to New York.
Yes.
And they were mobbed at their hotel.
Some things never change, I guess, this kind of fan behavior. Even though many more luxury hotels would open further up Broadway, keeping pace with the moving speed of high society up the island, the Astor House continued to remain popular. Abraham Lincoln stayed here in 1860 when he came to town to give his iconic speech at Cooper Union.
And get his photo taken.
Yes, up at Matthew Brady's. And this Cooper Union appearance may have helped seal his election to President of the United States the following year.
So stepping back then to look at the Astor family sort of in general, they were so savvy commercially, right? It's not really a big surprise then that they would, and subsequent generations, would really know how to run hotels. Was this first hotel, this Astor House, was it passed down through the Astor generations?
In a sense, it gets very tricky when you're talking the Astors, actually. So John Jacob Astor died in 1848, leaving the hotel to his son, William Backhouse Astor. Now, when William Backhouse Astor died in 1875, the property was then divided between his two sons, with William Backhouse Astor Jr. getting the north half and John Jacob Astor III getting the south half.
Okay. Side note, William Backhouse Astor Jr. was also married to Caroline Schermerhorn, the Mrs. Astor.
Yes.
Sorry, but this is sounding very similar to the creation of another Astor family hotel that was located farther north of here between 33rd and 34th on 5th Avenue. That would be the Hotel Waldorf and the Hotel Astoria, which would join together to become the Waldorf Astoria. The Astors just never, the family just did not make it easy in terms of hotel management, right? They were just the conflicts inside this family.
I feel like these great hotels are made out of these conflicts, in fact. Well, to make it simple for us, since we're doing short stories here, the Astor House remained standing until 1913, or rather, part of it did.
1913.
By that date, the Astors had other hotels in the city. In fact, there were scores of far fancier, more modern hotels in New York City. But the Astor House was being dwarfed by that time by skyscrapers, including one in particular, which was rising quite high right above it in 1913. Something still under construction? Can you imagine? Can you guess what that is?
I think you might be talking about the Woolworth Building, Greg.
Yeah.
AKA the Cathedral of Commerce, built with 1 million nickels and dimes. So, wow, standing just next to that, the Astor House must have looked pretty tiny and insignificant.
Right, dingy, right? And in another sign of modernity here, beneath the streets going on was the construction of new subway tunnels, which threatened to send the whole hotel crumbling to the ground. And so they tore it down in two parts. The southern side in 1913 to be replaced by the 7-story Astor Building, which provided offices and retail space. And then the northern side was torn down in 1926 and replaced with the 44-story Transportation Building. Both the Astor House building and the Transportation Building, the buildings which replaced it, are both still standing today.
Wow. So there was, if I'm counting right, this 13-year gap between the destruction of the two sides of the hotel. Was half of it just sitting there like a ruin for 13 years?
It was, actually. And in fact, in my thinking, this is why I think there's so much nostalgia at this time, such an outpouring of nostalgia for the Astor House in recollections in newspapers. There's just all of these articles of just like the good old days of the Astor House. People would walk by the ruined half of the hotel that was still standing there, looking up and just reminiscing of the past. But another thing keeping nostalgia alive for the Astor House, this is so interesting, was that they actually had a fire sale. that they had when the first half was torn down, sending every available fixture of the Astor House to the four corners of New York City. Keep in mind, this hotel was connected in people's minds to like great technological advances.
Yeah.
Right? So to have a little bit of that you could take home to your house or take home to your business was magical. As the New York Herald remarked in later years, quote, "The Astor House closed its room register and its big front doors to guests on May 29th, 1913. There was the usual wake, in the course of which nearly everything conveniently portable was carried away as a souvenir by the old-time habitués of the place. Clerks, porters, chambermaids, and waiters who had done duty for the house for half a lifetime wept as they went out reluctantly into a cold world, a world that knew them not save as cogs in the Astor House wheel." Unquote.
And so we bid farewell to the Astor House Hotel. But Greg, why don't we try something a little bit more festive next, shall we? Why don't we hop on the elevated here and head up to Herald Square? Let's go dancing right after this.